The shock landed without warning. One moment the fandom thought the usual tension around Andrei and Elizabeth was winding down, and the next moment a $1 million lawsuit dropped on the table with a ban so sudden it felt like the network hit a panic switch. The speed of the move stunned everyone. It looked like the past had snapped open and spilled a file no one ever thought would see daylight. Welcome back. This is Jessica, and you are watching Reality Spots. If you follow this franchise closely, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments what detail you want me to break next. The ban did not feel like a quiet decision. It felt like a decision someone had been preparing for a long time, almost like the network had been collecting puzzle pieces behind the curtain. Viewers noticed how the tone shifted around the couple in recent seasons. Some scenes felt tighter. Some reactions from production looked tense. Nothing was said out loud, but the air felt heavier every year. When the leaked documents appeared online, fans suddenly saw references to old patterns that matched things viewers had sensed but never fully understood. These files pointed to habits that had been forming long before the lawsuit. Nothing in the documents looked like a fresh surprise to the people who worked behind the scenes. The surprise was that these records were now out in the open. The first shock in the file showed how early the concerns had started. Some notes hinted that crew members had trouble controlling the flow of scenes. Others shared concerns about rising stress. None of this was enough to trigger a lawsuit by itself, but when you read the file from the first page to the last, the slow build becomes clear. Little moments added up, and the network treated each moment quietly, almost like they were trying not to draw attention. Production depends on predictability. The crew needs to know how someone might react when pressure hits. The leaked notes made it clear that predictability was becoming rare during certain scenes. There were days where filming ran late and tension rose fast. There were days where the tone shifted without warning. A few moments were so chaotic that staff wrote them down immediately, so no detail would be forgotten. Fans noticed the pressure on screen too. As seasons passed, arguments grew sharper and timing felt tighter. Some viewers thought the network encouraged conflict for ratings. Others argued that the stress of filming created the conflict. The leaked file hinted that the truth sat somewhere in the middle. People reacted to pressure in ways no one expected, and the network reacted to those reactions by stepping back and writing down everything. The lawsuit hit because those records stacked up. One note might not cause panic. 10 notes might create concern. 50 notes begin to look like a pattern, and one pattern can turn into a financial threat if the wrong situation unfolds. When you read the file as a timeline, it feels like the network saw a storm forming and tried to reinforce every wall before the rain hit. Viewers always wonder why the network makes sudden decisions, why a couple disappears, why a storyline gets cut short, why a new cast member shows up out of nowhere. It is never as random as it looks. Sometimes the network hides a decision to protect the audience from the full weight of what happened. Other times, they hide it to protect themselves. The leaked file shifted public understanding. People began asking how long the network had been holding on to this information. Some fans argued the couple had been unfairly targeted. Others thought this was overdue. Neither side has the full picture because the documents that leaked are only a portion of what exists. Networks track more than they share. They always do. The speed of the ban made more sense once people saw the file. There were concerns about cast safety. There were concerns about crew fatigue. There were concerns about liability. When those concerns line up on paper and point toward a risk the network cannot control, banning someone becomes a quick decision. Protect the brand, protect the staff, protect the budget. That logic repeats through every page of the leaked file. On social media, fans wondered why the network waited so long. The documents give a partial answer. For years, production tried to manage the pressure. They adjusted schedules. They repositioned crew. They reduced contact during certain scenes. They tried to keep filming smooth. The small adjustments worked long enough to keep the storyline alive, but the risk behind those adjustments did not disappear. It grew. Every network has a limit, a point where managing a situation costs more than ending it. The lawsuit shows that the limit arrived long before the public realized anything was wrong. This was not a slow transition from concern to catastrophe. This was a sprint. The moment legal reviewed the full timeline, everything shifted. The ban served as a warning shot that the network was no longer willing to risk another page being added to the file. The most surprising part of the leak was not the content. It was the age of some entries. Some notes were written seasons ago. Some incidents happened during years when the couple looked stable on screen. Many viewers believed the drama was only recent, so seeing older notes changed the entire conversation. People who worked on set knew these moments existed, but the audience never got the full context. The leaked file built that context for the first time. It showed a long chain of issues that connected in ways no one expected. Each entry made the next entry heavier. By the time the lawsuit appeared, the foundation had already cracked. The question now sits at the center of the discussion. What did the network fear the most? Was it a situation escalating beyond control? Was it a financial blowback? Was it a public scandal bigger than the show? Or was it something hidden deeper in the file that never leaked at all? Tell me in the comments what you think the network was trying to protect before the ban hit. From the outside, Andrei and Elizabeth looked like the kind of couple the network loved to spotlight. High visibility, strong opinions, and guaranteed screen-pulling moments. But as the seasons rolled on, the image that once fueled ratings slowly turned into something the production team began watching a little too closely. Nothing happened overnight. It was a gradual shift, one that viewers saw in fragments, but production saw in full. Early seasons showed them navigating family conflicts, shifting alliances, and emotional blow-ups. Those scenes weren't unusual for reality TV, but the intensity began climbing each year. On screen, fans saw arguments about boundaries, finances, and loyalty. Off-screen, interviews and social posts added layers that didn't always line up with what was happening on camera. That mismatch created a pattern the network grew wary of. Anytime a storyline appeared to resolve itself, something new emerged the next season, often sharper than before. Audience reactions were split. Some called the drama authentic. Others insisted it was becoming too chaotic. Either way, the network paid attention. Ratings stayed high, but so did tension behind the scenes. Production crews noticed how quickly small disagreements turned into full confrontations. Scenes that were supposed to be simple updates sometimes spiraled into heated exchanges that took hours to settle. Crew members weren't alarmed yet, but they were taking notes. The shift became more visible when certain public statements started getting traction. Interviews where Andrei or Elizabeth expressed frustration with how they were portrayed, social posts where relatives fired back, confessionals that hinted at deeper resentment brewing underneath the storyline. The more public the conflict became, the more difficult it was for production to maintain control of the narrative. And then, a new pattern emerged, one that production couldn't ignore. Episodes would air, and viewers would instantly dissect every moment online. Comments snowballed. Clips spread faster than before. Andrei's more forceful moments and Elizabeth's emotional reactions drew polarized responses, increasing the pressure on both the family and the crew assigned to manage them. Production reportedly began tracking these shifts. Sudden spikes in tension, unpredictable filming days, escalating family dynamics, and a noticeable difficulty in keeping scenes on schedule. It wasn't that the couple couldn't film, it was that filming them now required a completely different level of management. By this point, the network quietly moved the couple from reliable high-drama personalities into a category that required regular internal discussion. They were still valuable, still central to storylines, still keeping the show at the top of fan conversations. But there was a growing sense that if anything tipped too far, the fallout would land directly on the network's shoulders. And that is when the first red flag entered the official record. Not a scandal, not a blowout. Just a single documented complaint inside production files. A moment so small that fans never noticed, but significant enough that someone behind the scenes felt it needed to be written down. The real question is, what exactly happened that day that pushed a crew member to file something the network couldn't ignore? When the leaked file surfaced, most people expected dramatic revelations. Instead, the earliest entries were surprisingly small, almost ordinary, until you looked at how many of them pointed in the same direction. These weren't scandals or explosive events. They were quiet signals that production had been tracking the pressure building around Andrei and Elizabeth long before anything became public. The earliest notes referenced moments viewers had already seen on screen, intense arguments, abrupt mood shifts, and scenes that took far longer to film than planned. At first glance, these looked like typical reality TV hurdles, but inside the file, the wording stood out. Crew members described filming days where emotional peaks hit without warning, where simple scenes spiraled into confrontations, and where it became difficult to maintain a calm environment. One part of the file focused on the strain of filming family conflicts. These were the same on-camera moments fans debated endlessly online: arguments between relatives, explosive dinners, and confessional segments where emotions ran high. But to the crew, these weren't just dramatic story beats, they were unpredictable. Long days where maintaining safety, pacing, and structure became harder each season. One crew note mentioned a day when a basic family update scene turned into hours of filming because emotions kept escalating. Nothing dangerous happened, nothing out of control, just a level of intensity that left the crew drained. Another entry described multiple attempts to reset a scene because tension between relatives kept resurfacing in unexpected ways. Again, all behavior that viewers saw on the show, but captured from a production perspective that highlighted how taxing those moments were behind the camera. What stood out most in the leaked file was how consistently these early notes emphasized the same problem: volatility, not constant, not daily, but frequent enough that crew members felt the need to track patterns. The pressure of filming a storyline that blended family strain, emotional vulnerability, and unresolved issues took a toll on everyone present. The show demanded authenticity, but authenticity sometimes came with unpredictable fallout. Then came the entry that changed everything. It wasn't the longest report, and it didn't describe anything shocking. But according to the leaked file, one particular incident made the network reconsider future risk for the first time. It involved a filming day where emotions erupted more quickly than expected, pushing the schedule far off track and forcing the crew to intervene multiple times to calm things down. No one was harmed and nothing crossed a line, but the unpredictability of that day triggered internal alerts. The report emphasized that production had difficulty controlling the environment and that the emotional climate was escalating beyond typical filming conditions. That single phrase, according to the leak, was what caught the eye of the network's legal team. It suggested that things were moving into territory where the company might face responsibility if future incidents escalated further. And from that moment on, everything in the file shifted. The tone became more cautious, the tracking more detailed, and the internal conversations more serious. What began as routine documentation suddenly became part of a broader evaluation, one that would eventually lead the network toward legal action. But the real mystery is this: what exactly happened on that filming day that made the legal team realize? After that early warning entered the file, the tone of internal documentation shifted. What had once been small observations, notes about tense filming days or scenes that ran longer than expected, slowly turned into a structured timeline of recurring concerns. Nothing dramatic at first, just a pattern taking shape, season by season, where small issues no longer stayed small for long. The next season brought heavier storylines. Family tensions intensified, and the conflicts that once flared up briefly began stretching across entire filming blocks. Crew notes reflected this. They documented emotional spikes during routine scenes, strained interactions between certain relatives, and moments where production had to pause to let emotions settle. None of these incidents were extreme. Viewers saw the same tension on screen. But inside the file, the accumulation mattered. By mid-season, the notes showed another shift. The couple's growing popularity amplified everything. Every disagreement, every confession, every moment of frustration. As viewership grew, so did the pressure. Fans dissected every episode online, and public reaction fed directly into the emotional climate on set. The production team began anticipating long days anytime a segment involved unresolved family issues or sensitive topics. Then came another season, and the entries became more structured. The file started grouping incidents: days where filming stalled due to escalating arguments, days where crew members recorded difficulty managing the emotional dynamic, days where the atmosphere grew unpredictable enough to require additional oversight. Again, everything tied to situations fans already witnessed on the show: conflicts over decisions, loyalty, communication, and family boundaries. The slow build was noticeable. What happened in one season didn't resolve in the next. Instead, tension stacked on top of tension, becoming part of the couple's ongoing arc. Production adjusted by adding extra support on filming days that involved sensitive family interactions. But even with those adjustments, the emotional weight kept growing. Moments that would have passed smoothly in earlier years now required careful handling. Another entry in the file highlighted a filming day where back-to-back arguments stretched a short scene into an entire afternoon. The network didn't see this as misconduct, just a sign that the storyline had reached a point where emotional exhaustion affected everyone involved. Filming unpredictable days like this wasn't dangerous, but it made the team more aware of how easily the environment could shift. Near the end of the timeline, the notes turned noticeably more cautious. Crew members wrote about rising tension during group scenes, quicker emotional reactions, and moments where production felt the need to monitor interactions more closely. These weren't accusations, they were risk indicators. Subtle, but consistent. And then, one entry stood out from the rest. It wasn't the most intense moment on camera, nor was it a major incident. But the report described a day where emotional escalation happened so rapidly that production had to stop filming multiple times. The note mentioned that the atmosphere had become unsustainable for standard shooting conditions, and that the unpredictability posed a growing concern. That was the entry that triggered an internal meeting, a meeting that brought the legal team into the conversation for the first time. They didn't act immediately. They didn't intervene on set. But from that point on, the couple's name appeared on a list they had never been on before. The list reserved for situations the network needed to monitor closely. The unanswered question is simple. What did the legal team see in that one report that made them step into the picture, quietly, and for reasons the public wouldn't learn about until much later? Inside the network, the conversation around Andrei and Elizabeth shifted from routine discussion to something more serious. Not because of a single incident, but because the pattern documented in the file now had the legal team watching. That alone changed the temperature of every meeting. What had once been viewed as high-value reality TV drama was now being evaluated through a different lens: safety, liability, and public reputation. Executives gathered to review the file, and the debate began immediately. The couple wasn't just another cast member, they were central to the franchise. Their episodes performed consistently well. Their storylines sparked conversations. Their conflicts drew huge engagement on social platforms. Removing them from the show wasn't a simple creative decision. It was a financial risk. Some executives argued that the couple's intensity was exactly what viewers expected. They pointed out that audiences responded strongly to the family dynamic and that their presence kept the show trending. From this perspective, stepping back from such high-performing personalities could damage the franchise. Every season, clips featuring them reached wide audiences. Every public conversation kept the show relevant. Ratings don't get ignored, but others saw something different. They studied the internal file and worried about the direction things were heading. The notes about emotional escalation, unpredictable filming days, and strained interactions weren't major incidents on their own, but stacked together, they hinted at a level of volatility that could eventually create a reputational problem. If future filming days grew harder to manage, or if emotional moments intensified beyond what cameras could safely navigate, the network could find itself responsible for not acting sooner. Safety wasn't just about physical environments. It included emotional well-being of cast, crew, and everyone involved. Production had a responsibility to create stable filming conditions, and the trends in the file suggested that those conditions were becoming harder to maintain over time. The legal team made this point clear. Ignoring early warnings now could lead to far greater consequences later. The financial division added another layer of complexity. They had to consider insurance, budget overruns caused by delayed filming, and the risk of future disputes if emotional escalation continued. A storyline that once fueled profits now sat at the center of a cost versus risk calculation. If anything went wrong, the price tag could be enormous. Yet, despite the caution, there were powerful voices insisting that the couple remain on screen. They believed the tension could be managed with stronger oversight. They argued that pulling them from the lineup would disrupt established story arcs and alienate viewers who had followed the family for years. Removing a popular couple could spark its own backlash, one that no network wanted to deal with. The debate stretched across multiple meetings. No one could agree on the right answer. The couple was valuable, but the risk was growing. The ratings were strong, but internal concern was stronger than ever. Every executive had a different line they were afraid to cross. Then, just as the internal conflict reached its peak, another factor entered the room: outside pressure. Pressure that didn't come from the network, the crew, or even the legal team, but from forces that would soon push the entire situation into a direction no one inside the building had fully prepared for. The public did not see the internal file, but the audience felt something shifting long before the lawsuit exploded online. Small moments on screen started to land differently when viewers went back and watched old clips. Scenes that once seemed like intense reality TV now looked sharper, heavier, and harder to brush off. Arguments that had been treated as normal franchise energy felt loaded when viewed again with the leaked information in mind. The tone of certain interactions changed when people realized how long the tension had been building. Fans noticed how filming days seemed to capture more pressure than before. In later seasons, the frustration between Andrei and the wider family often reached levels that people debated for weeks after new episodes aired. Viewers pointed out how the emotional volume kept rising. They questioned the way conversations escalated in front of cameras. What had once been treated as dramatic entertainment now sparked threads asking why production kept stepping closer to the edge each year. Social media amplified every small shift. Whenever Elizabeth spoke about stress on screen, fans paid attention. Whenever Andrei argued with someone from the family, those scenes turned into trending discussions. Even basic interviews created ripples. When the couple talked about the challenges of filming or the intensity of family conflict, viewers treated those comments like puzzle pieces. They tried to match the tone of their posts with the tone of their episodes. People started asking if the show was becoming harder for them to film. The public conversations grew louder. Reaction channels broke down scenes with new context. Comment sections moved from laughing at the drama to asking bigger questions. Longtime viewers began to compare early seasons to more recent ones. They pointed to moments where tension seemed to spike faster than before. Some fans defended the couple and said the show exaggerated conflict. Others felt concerned and wondered if production was pushing situations too hard. None of this proved what was inside the internal file. It simply showed a shift in the way the audience interpreted what they saw. That shift mattered because the network pays close attention to viewer response. When fans start reading scenes with a focus on emotional pressure instead of entertainment value, the temperature around a storyline changes. Posts from the couple also added fuel. Whenever Andrei spoke strongly about family conflict, the clips spread fast. Whenever Elizabeth mentioned stress, uncertainty, or frustration, fans noticed the contrast between polished episodes and real-time emotions. The timing always triggered conversation. Those reactions did not create the network's concern, but they matched patterns the network was already tracking. The alignment between public questions and internal notes made the situation more sensitive. By this point, the gap between what the audience saw and what the network knew became impossible to ignore. The public was reacting to visible cracks. The network had a file documenting the same patterns from another angle. It created a mirror effect. One side saw emotional intensity on TV. The other side saw it in workplace reports. Then it reached a point where online chatter grew stronger than expected. Fans kept pointing to one specific shift in tone during a late-season storyline. The comments poured in. People wanted to know why the energy between the couple and the rest of the cast felt different. Some said the reactions seemed heavier. Others felt uncomfortable with how fast arguments escalated on screen. The more viewers discussed these moments, the more pressure built around the franchise. The conversation turned into a cycle. Fans noticed something. They posted about it. Clips started trending. New viewers joined the conversation. Older viewers pulled out old footage to compare behavior across seasons. Every time a clip resurfaced, the network saw the discourse pick up again. At this stage, the public still had no idea how much was happening behind the curtain. They only responded to what they watched. But the timing of their reactions landed during a sensitive period. The internal debates were already intense. The legal team had already reviewed patterns. Production already knew the couple required closer monitoring. Now, a wave of public attention was hitting the same points at the same moment. That combination pushed the situation closer to a breaking point. It set the stage for what happened next. A moment that went from internal frustration to something the network could not ignore. A moment that turned quiet concern into an immediate decision.